You guys know that occasionally at Diabetics Doing Things, we get to be part of some pretty cool collaborations. And as a member of the diabetes media, we get exclusive access sometimes. So a filmmaking duo that I have known now for a few years and co-hosted a panel in National Diabetes Awareness Month 2021 with is Scott Alexander Ruderman and Rachael Dyer, who are the filmmakers behind the documentary film Pay or Die. You guys have probably heard about Pay or Die on the diabetes online community over the years. And we have great news that this March, so March 2023 at South by Southwest, March 11th, Pay or Die is premiering at the South by Southwest Film Festival. And not only is the film premiering, there's also a panel on March 12th in Austin, a live panel that includes Scott, diabetes advocate Nichole Smith-Holt, who's also featured in the film, Texas representative and type 1 diabetic James Talarico, and Vincent Rajkumar from the Mayo Clinic. So that panel is happening on March 12th. The premiere of Pay or Die is March 11th, and you can still get tickets online. If you're listening online, you can go to the show notes for links to the panel, to tickets at the film festival, and to payorddiefilm.com, which is the website for the film with all of the information that Scott and Rachael talk about coming up in this interview. So please enjoy this interview with Scott Alexander Ruderman and Rachael Dyer. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diabetics Doing Things. We are telling the amazing stories of people with diabetes from all over the world, and I am very excited to introduce today's guests. They're my friend who become my friends. They're creatives. Scott lives with type 1 diabetes, and Rachael, his partner and collaborator, has been along for the journey. So I'd love to introduce you guys to Scott Ruderman and Rachael Dyer. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Rob. We're so happy to be here and, excited to chat to you about the next stages of the film.
That's right. So in the intro, we talked about, the film is Pay or Die, and you guys are in a very exciting time for the film because the public is now going to be brought in as it debuts at South by Southwest 2023, March 12th in Austin. And it's also going to have a live panel with you and some of the folks from the film and other supporters. I've got the event in the show notes. So if you're listening to this interview here in the next couple of weeks, you can go and attend if you're in that area or going down to South by Southwest. Definitely a can't miss event. So we've talked before, and those who've been, big fans of the pod and following on social for that amount of time probably remember during National Diabetes Awareness Month in 2021, I got to host a panel discussion with both of you during National Diabetes Awareness Month. And we talked about sort of the inspiration for the film and what stories were going to be told. And it was a very community forward event. And I think we had 40 or 50 folks from the online community who joined us on that day and really talked about that project. So I'd love to kind of dive in now, almost 18 months since then, and, just talk about how things have been going since then. There's been some big developments. But, how are you guys? And thanks for coming and welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Rob. I will say 18 months ago, it sounds like it was just yesterday we spoke to you, but a lot has happened. Like you mentioned, we are so thrilled to finally bring the film to life at such an amazing festival, one of the biggest festivals in the world, that not is only a film festival, but music festival, and also has the opportunity to go beyond just showing the film, but to talk about it and put it on the front stage of the world and really dive into the issue and see how we can make change as creators.
Well, and for those who are listening and have never been to a South by Southwest, there really isn't any other event like it that I've been to. It kind of takes over all of downtown Austin. There's all the bars and restaurants and, lots of companies doing cool activations and events. And it really is just a great vibe and environment and energy to it. And I think, with the film festival at the sort of beginning of the film, tech, and music really does set the tone. So I'm really excited to kind of see what also media covering you guys' premiere and talking about diabetes at large, just being in the sort of zeitgeist and in the media is an exciting thing for me, just as an onlooker, as a casual onlooker. But obviously for you guys, we get to see Pay or Die finally, reach the public and do its world premiere. So for those who weren't able to join us last November, or two Novembers ago, I suppose, let's talk a little bit about the origin and the inspiration for Pay or Die, and where did it come from? And you guys have shared your story together, and I love how that's really the foundational part of it. So where did the concept first start for the both of you?
Well, Rachel and I were, we're filmmakers in the industry. That's how we met on a production. Rachel was a producer at the time, and I was the director of photography. And, after just talking about it, and her understanding what, I'm living with type 1 diabetes and telling her about it, and her telling me about, kind of her experience as a reporter talking about medical refugees in the United States. We kind of knew the issue was going on. We happened to be both in Canada, and Rachel was like, try it. Go into a Canadian pharmacy and see if you can get cheaper insulin. And I was hesitant to at first, but I went in, and the pharmacist presented all the options to me. You know, it was one of those like moments where you're like, wow, exciting, but so frustrated at the same time. And, it was kind of like that. You're torn. And for the first time, I'm actually feeling accepted in a pharmacy, yet alone in another country, having this condition. And that was what pushed us. I mean, we came back, we did the research, and we were shocked about what people were doing in the United States to afford their medication, the lengths they were going to, what they were putting themselves against. And we said, we need to make a film as filmmakers about this, and let's do it. And 4 years later, here we are. But it's been a journey. It's been a hard journey. It's been quite a learning curve for both of us, and a reality, a shock. But it's important that these stories like this are told for things to change.
Well, and it's a story that's so personal to both of you, obviously, like with, Scott, obviously living with diabetes, and Rachel with your history of journalism, especially, medical refugees from America. And just to add context to that for listeners, you guys have seen in the media quite frequently over the last few years, caravans of people going across the border to Mexico or to Canada to, get supplies for themselves and for others in their community for exactly the reason that you said, Scott, is that you can go there and they present the options to you and you pay cash and almost no questions asked in many cases. And so, the reflection for you guys coming back is to say, wow, more people need to know about the realities of the hoops that we have to jump through here in the United States around insulin pricing, which, as we're talking and recording in February 2023, is been at the forefront of the media coverage here recently. It's also been in the last few State of the Union addresses across both administrations, other platforms on the national stage. And why is it so important for you guys, from a contextual perspective, for the film to come out now, today in 2023?
Yeah, I think that, why this issue is, and so important for us to have this film out this year, is because it is being talked about in the media. It is top of mind in a lot of politics, legislation, discussions, news, media. And, I think that now is the time for us to be able to tell this story and make the change. And we want to do it ahead of the elections in 2024, where it's going to be all about the elections. There's going to be a lot of noise around the election. So if we can get both parties interested and understand this topic ahead of that time and get the voices and everyone to rally around it, and to see that not only access to insulin is a huge issue, but healthcare in America in general is, a huge issue. And I think that is the point of this film, is to shine a light on access to insulin as like the tip of the iceberg of what is happening across all of America for so many people who are suffering and struggling with access to affordable medication for so many different conditions and diseases. So that's why we want to make sure that this change can come in now. It's very timely. And, this is a great opportunity for us to be able to do that and for everyone to work together to make that change.
I totally agree. And, just to your point, it is gaining momentum within legislation. You guys even have a member of the Texas House of Representatives who's going to be on the panel promoting the film. So, it's good to see that, on, our leadership in this country, at least some members of each of the parties are at least paying closer attention to insulin in particular, but as you said, the entire healthcare system for Americans.
Yeah, and I think what's really nice about it, and we won't dive too much into the politics of it all, but it is a bipartisan issue, and it is something where both sides of the collective can come together and want to work together to ensure that something is done about this. So I think that's what makes this film unique, is it is something that can make a change moving forward, and especially as we come into 2024.
I totally agree. And we've often said on this podcast that, you know, regardless of political affiliation or where you're from in the world, we're all but one autoimmune chronic illness diagnosis from really caring about access to healthcare. So yeah, I think from both sides of the aisle, hopefully we'll get a lot of support for that very soon. Moving forward, though, bringing this film to life, you said you've been working on this for 4 years. That's actually when I first heard about the project. One of your early collaborators and I were at an event and he mentioned it. And it was funny. We were actually talking about potentially promoting the film on the podcast. So today, as I was going back and trying to figure out sort of the paper trail of the last few years between our two projects, it was cool to see like, wow, it has been 4 years and here we are on the podcast. We're here on the cusp of the official premiere. What's it been like to work on this together for such a long time? I think that's something that I, doing this podcast now for 7 years, working on various creative projects throughout my professional career, the longevity of a project like this and the energy and the frequency of, checking back in and continuing to move things forward. It can expand rapidly and become a huge project. So what's it been like, working on this for so long between the two of you?
I think I'll talk about it from the perspective of our style as filmmakers in terms of following very human character-driven stories. I think that our specialty of working together and what we love to focus on is human interest stories and seeing it through the eyes of that character and those subjects and really living and breathing with them over a certain amount of time. And, through those 4 years, you see people develop, change, you go on those journeys with them and you really see character transformation. And I think that is why we love doing what we do in all of the different aspects of filmmaking, is really being with those subjects. But I think what was really special for this film in particular was Scott being a type 1 diabetic, myself being a type none, but the intimacy of we went in primarily just the two of us on a lot of those shoots, and we built trust with our subjects. And we're able to do that because Scott came at it from a lens of knowing how to live with type 1 diabetes, knowing what that means for, physical, emotional, financial. And then myself, I guess, seeing it from the partner's perspective and being able to relate to that other person as a carer, as, a voice of reason from the other side. So I think that was a really nice beauty and opportunity we had with this film. But as Scott will attest and tell you, it did have challenges because you were so close.
Yeah, I mean, before even just being so close, I mean, it was also challenging to realize that it took 4 years for anything to happen. I mean, we followed the story, one of our lead subjects, Nichole, we followed her story in Minnesota for 4 years. I mean, what she's gone through, up and down, those were the realities of it. And that's documentary, right? You can't create an ending, it evolves. So it takes time, and part of all of that is going on that journey, watching this film and seeing how much it takes to fight an issue. Personally, as a having type 1 diabetes and having that camera on my shoulder, being so close to it, it's kind of like a wake-up call. It's the reality that I can be in this position if I don't take care of myself. I could be in this position if I don't find alternate ways to make sure I have extra insulin, or be on top of making sure I get jobs on the side to get the money to cover myself. I mean, you live with this reality of well, what if something hits the fan and, what do you do? So it's a reminder. The whole 4 years working on this film was a reminder of all of that, of all of those, those threats.
And doesn't it present you as a filmmaker with a unique perspective, like sharing that burden, obviously like shouldering the camera and, bringing the perspective from a film perspective, but also, I experienced this very similarly on the podcast. We don't have to spend a lot of time in expository, conversations about where we're coming from. We can dive right into the real issues because on both sides, we have a shared understanding of what we're going through. And I think our listeners who have been to meetups or, have been to diabetes events where instantly you're able to just skip all the explanation about your devices and your injections and counting carbs, and you're looking across the aisle or the table, or shaking hands with a person, or in a Zoom room with somebody who really knows what you're going through in a way that many people don't, no matter how close they are to you.
I mean, yeah, I think that, what I've seen from that perspective, again, when I first started and before I met Scott, I knew nothing about type 1 diabetes. I'll be very honest. But I think the biggest thing that I learned straight on doing the research, becoming involved in the community, is it is such a strong community. It is such a supportive community. It is a community that shares that camaraderie of like being together and supporting one another. And I think that I loved that right from the beginning, and was a very powerful thing, I think, for me to see as, someone who didn't live with it, but how all the time you'll see someone, injecting themselves, or someone wearing a device, and straight away you'll come up to each other and you'll chat, and it'll be just it. I've never quite seen something like that when it comes to like a medical issue. And I love that. I just think it's a really special bond that type 1s have. And it was great to kind of witness that, I think, from the outside perspective as well.
I 100% agree. And it's sometimes funny because I'm a very big presence. I'm a large guy. And so sometimes I'll just run up to you and be like, hey, I saw your pod or your sensor. And I'm like, hey, like, I get it. Me too, and I'll show them my pump or something like that. And usually it takes them like 30 seconds. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But yeah, always good feelings. Okay. So back to the project a little bit. After our 2021 panel and sort of roundtable discussion, you guys have had some pretty big announcements within the film project, even bringing on some like major Hollywood producers, a couple of personal mutual friends of ours who came on to also help produce the project. How did that change the trajectory of that project? What can you tell us about that journey? And what was it like to get that recognition from real industry pros that this was going to premiere, like this really had legs?
I think what's interesting, everyone that's come onto the project, initially, had some sort of relation to it. But as the project evolved, more people saw this as a film about healthcare, right? This is important. Healthcare is important to a lot of people in this country. And they saw this as a way to create discussion and say, look, this is evidence. Like, our healthcare system is not working for a lot of people in this country. And I think that's where we got that support, and it changing the trajectory of the film. It's helped us really get the film out there. What's really nice is everyone that did come on board really loved the approach we took of kind of following these character stories, getting into the human stories, and being with the people, and not just being another talking, interviewing head of statistics 20 around during the whole movie. Like, we're in it with the people, and that's the perspective that most people relate to. So everyone loved the film, or loves the film, for that. So I think that's why we're able to bring everyone together on this project.
Yeah, and especially, as you said, Rob, like the big players, like we have Sarah Silverman as an EP, and what we loved about her coming on board was that she doesn't have a direct connection to type 1 diabetes, but she's so passionate about healthcare and wanting to make a change in healthcare in this country. And I think it's that passion and drive and necessity that a change is needed. And I think, having the celebrity weight, or like, some of the big players that have come on board in the film, it's people realize that, and they want to do what they can to help to make that change and to make noise about the film and the issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think it's really important because, as you said, Sarah Silverman doesn't have a direct tie to diabetes, but everybody in the United States has a direct tie to healthcare and its impact and its importance. And, really, this is not a problem for just people with diabetes. This is a problem for all people. And, I think that's something that, in the community, like you said, we're a very strong community, but we're very small but mighty. And I think, it's really important for us to win outside support when they have no reason to really care about the people with diabetes, other than it's a large issue and they care about people. And so, I'm excited also to see the human stories, because I think that's what we attach ourselves to, are these people who are, living these, real lives, extraordinary and ordinary, and, just trying to make ends meet one day at a time. And, I think it's kind of a nice transition into our next segment, or our next question about, creative work within the diabetes space while you're living with diabetes. I'm sure while you're holding that heavy camera on your shoulder, you're experiencing highs and lows alongside of it. And, I know, and I know others that work in the diabetes space, or lots of creative energy to diabetes, can know that weight of diabetes, and also where is my income coming in to manage my supplies and insurance and technology and all of those things. What was it like to kind of live the reality that you're covering in your work? And did that ever become overwhelming, or, how did you manage, that when it, sort of came to a head?
It's always a challenge. One of the things about living with type 1 diabetes is that it's 24/7, right? There's no break. Oh yeah, I can turn this off now and go back to, an easy life, an easy life. But no, it's, you're constantly thinking about it. It's, subconsciously too, right? It's just on the back of your mind, whether whatever you're doing, you're like, oh, am I dropping? Is my blood sugar high? I think, technology has made it easier, but, it's something that it's all with feeling. In the work I do as a cameraman, I'm in different, situations where access is not there, but I always carry the snacks I need. I always make sure that my blood sugars are elevated. I keep on top of them. But, there's stress, there's all these other factors that, you deal with on a daily basis. So, it's hard to just say there's one way to do it. And I think any type 1 will say there is no one way to do it. Every day is you find a challenge, right? Every day you experience a high, a low. I mean, preparation, you can only prepare for so much. You
That's
don't
right.
know what's going to come to you. And in a way, maybe I'm a little more prepared for that, in the sense of being a documentary cameraman. You don't know what's going to happen in front of the lens. What you get is what you get, and you either walk away with an amazing result or you walk away with a missed result. It's the same thing, right? You either have a good day, your blood sugars are elevated, or you were high all day, or you had 2 lows today.
But I think what's really been also interesting to see it from the other side is, and we cover this in the 3 kind of key storylines that we follow in our film, is it's a financial, an emotional, mental, and a physical burden. And, that is something that Scott, yourself, everyone has to live with daily. And to see, those 3 kind of paths, having to navigate them, is hugely challenging. But it also, what I find impressive with what you do, with what Scott does, it allows you're still being a freelance filmmaker, you're still creating the content you can do it. And I think that sometimes is why it's so difficult with type 1, is because it can be an invisible disease. And so people, are so unsuspecting of oh, you have type 1, that you can still do all of this stuff. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing.
I agree. And I also see, what is invisible to most people, which is the decisions and sort of negotiations that you have with yourself with creative projects, or with, really digging in and going all in on, a passion project at first that, can become your life's work in many cases. And, a thing that I have thought about for many years, and, working to find ways to create other opportunities for creators with diabetes, is I know that there's someone out there with an amazing idea for a creative project who's not making the jump because they have really good reasons to stay at their job, because they have health insurance or because they have a steady income. And so it's important to me to share creative stories like yours, where, you're dedicating 4 years plus of your life to this story, using all the skills that you've acquired over your career. And you're not only working on this, you're also working on, other gigs or other projects, and, using your skills to, help pay the bills and create opportunities for you to do the work that's most important to you. So I don't know, maybe talk a little bit about that. I'm sure you've had moments where you're both kind of looking at each other and you're low on energy and you're low on motivation, or you're low on funds, or whatever the case may be. And you're like, are we doing that? Why are we doing this? When you get in those moments, like, what would you tell someone who's maybe overthinking, like taking that jump, or who's afraid of what's on the other side of that risk?
I think for, commitment is really, finding belief in yourself, and commitment, and trying to find some sort of hope to get yourself out of bed in the morning is really what, you could kind of use to drive yourself. I know it's, easier said than done. And the reality comes down to living with a condition that costs a lot of money, is you need an income. And it is very hard, because it's not the fact that what if you make the money or not, but the process of thinking of that, right? The process of waking up every day, am I going to have a job or not? And if I don't, my life is on the line, or I need to figure out a way to keep myself alive. Fortunately, I haven't been in the position where I had to ration my insulin, but the thought is still there. So, even though I'm able to attain jobs to allow me to work on, independent projects like this, the thought is certainly still instilled in me. There's absolutely no way where I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be fine diabetes for the rest of my life. No, it's there. It's real.
I think that, oh, I'm sorry, Rachel, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, like what I think is super important is I go back to that idea of the T1 community being so strong, and why podcasts like this, like your show, is so important, because it is all about community and community support. And especially creatively, if, type ones and their partners or colleagues or business partners can come together and support each other through this, I think that's, key as well, and just super important to kind of encourage and, keep each other going and be supportive of projects.
And especially working on a project like this, you think about it, well, if I stop this project, then there's no solution.
Yeah.
If we could continue this project and possibly make change, then maybe we could, relieve that fear for so many people. So people could do what they want and go and get a master's degree and work a job that they can afford their medication, and not have to wait tables to be on subsidiaries so they could get benefits, so that's kind of what pushes you, that you're not only helping yourself in doing this and making a film, you're lending a voice to many that are working a 9-to-5 job that they might not want to do, but because they want to be an artist or work with animals. That's the real motivator that we say, no, we have to get this done.
Well, and I think too, it's like, what possibilities could this short-term pain open up for other people? And, that's where it really does become communal, is like, if we can tell these stories, if we can get this out there, if we can do this project justice and make our art in a way that others can buy into and can see themselves in. Because as you're talking, Scott, about, it's sort of that shadow that's with you, is like, it's not just my day-to-day management. You guys heard my alarm probably earlier in this recording. Listeners of my blood sugar is like 180 right now. Yeah, we've got high blood sugars, low blood sugars day in and day out, but that shadow that follows us is that we're walking a very tight line, and that looming on the other side of a couple of bad weeks, or a couple of bad, for me, bad projects or bad client engagements, or whatever the case may be, is me having to decide how I'm going to get what I need to survive. And I think that's so tangible. And that's another great reason why I think that, so many people with diabetes are going to see themselves through the different characters in your film. And that's what's going to, I think, rally a lot of support around it in the community at large as well. So really looking forward to seeing that. And I think hopefully, I know that a goal for me for this podcast is to, when 16-year-old Rob was looking for people with diabetes who were doing things that, I was interested in, that they'll see someone. So some Scott thinking, kid is going to see this film and say, wow, maybe I can bring something like this to life. And, I think that's a legacy that in the short time that type 1 diabetes has been livable, really only the last 100 years, it's cool to be on the forefront of those types of things. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that response. I do want to shift before we ask about like how we can support as listeners in the community, as and as community members. Like, I want to talk about you guys and work, life, and love. You guys are partners and creative partners and business partners, and like that, there's so many layers of that. And I think you live this project, like not only Scott, like living with diabetes, but you guys are both filmmakers and journalists and storytellers and also professional and personal and lovers, partners. Like, what's it like to have your lives so interconnected, and then like getting to the point where we are now, where you're on a press tour for this project you've been working on, and real people who, are not involved with the project are going to see, the output of you guys' work. Like, what has that been like for the both of you?
Yes, I think the faces say it all.
Yeah. I would say sacrifice in a good way, commitment. I think what's amazing is that we did have each other to lean on in the hard moments, in the challenges, right? We had that trust. Making a film from scratch that's talking about such a big issue is really difficult. And not only were we able to put an amazing team together, but at the end of the day, we could vent on that level. And we're both in the industry. So I think that really helps understanding kind of the way the trends are and things like that. And the lifestyle of what it's like to be a filmmaker. I mean, that's the other thing too. I mean, being a documentary filmmaker is a very certain lifestyle, and you have to sacrifice many things.
Yeah, and I think sacrificing, like, so much. I think that's the hardest thing, is doing the juggling act of trying to balance life, work, and enjoying, like, your own personal time too. I think that was the hardest thing, is that for us to try and separate ourselves from working on this, because again, it is so personal to us and we live with it every single day. Even when we're not documenting on the film, we're personally living it as a couple and partners in business. But it was definitely, I take it as a blessing, because we learnt so much, I think, through the eyes too of our subjects. Like, we were sitting there and we would learn things as we watched other couples, or the mother and daughter, or Nichole being a mother who lost her son. I think that was so emotionally challenging for us, but was also really important for us to see our lives through the lens of those characters so personally. Mm-hmm. And I think, you'll kill me for saying this, but I'm going to say it. If we lasted 4 years through the film, and he managed to propose at the end. So we've just had an engagement. So if we're like, if we can make it through the film, a pandemic, and then get engaged at the end, there is hope. There is hope at the end.
There is some hope for the two of you.
Doable. It's doable.
Congratulations!
People.
Wow, what a huge news bomb. This is great. Yeah. This is why we do the podcast, to get the scoops, the early scoops. Congratulations to you both.
But you bring it into your life, your family. When you are the principal makers of the film, especially sharing it. It's we're doing this together. Even though we have differences, we also we balance all of that.
Well, that's very cool, and thank you guys for sharing and being so open about your relationship and your life. I know that that's not exactly what we all go on podcasts to dig into, but it's always really curious. I'm always really curious, because when you're working in diabetes and you're living with diabetes and you're bringing somebody else who's also your partner into that, there's just so much at stake, and there's so much going on. So props to you guys for making it through, and the little thing, global pandemic, all of that stuff. That's no big deal for you guys. So congratulations. So I do want to, kind of get to that question. Like, what can we do as listeners of this podcast, as, watchers of these clips on social media, even if we can't attend the premiere and the panel on March 13th, how can we support Pay or Die?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The key thing is that, believe it or not, as independent filmmakers, we are still fundraising. So, we do have our GoFundMe page and, the opportunity for people to still donate to this project. Because although it sounds like we're finishing the film, we still have the rest of the year to roll it out and to go to these festivals to promote it, to make sure that people hear about it. And, to just make sure that we don't stop dead, we keep going. And, so we have that opportunity to still donate. And even if you don't donate, we have our website, which offers resources to people who are looking for assistance and help. And also too, we're like open for people just to reach out to us as filmmakers. If they want to learn about, the industry and being a creative, we're here for support and, happy to offer that too.
One of the things about making this film, and yes, it's been 4 years, we're not at the end, it's a new start, because not only do we hope to get it into festivals and an amazing distributor, one of the things we are, in the midst of doing and going to launch after South by is our impact campaign. We really want to push this film out there and allow people to take this film, to get it in the eyes of people that are change makers. So we are initiating a social impact campaign following this film. So really, I kind of stay tuned and hang tight, because hopefully you'll be able to get involved with us.
Yeah, well, count us in. I'll skip over my checks and balances on my team and just committing ourselves to that. But I think you brought up something else that's interesting, and I only know a fraction of, is that making a film is not just producing the film and exporting it and hitting, checking the box and done. You guys obviously now have the festival circuit and getting the distribution so that more people can see it, and hopefully we'll be hosting a Diabetics Doing Things watch party when that all gets announced. So I really want to just applaud you guys for the work that you've done thus far. Cannot wait to hear more about the impact campaign, and count us in to continuing to share that message out as well. But guys, I really thank you for your time today, and for just being longtime collaborators. Even just a couple conversations over 4 years. I just very grateful to be in the wake of your influence and to be a small part of this project. And I just know it's going to be super impactful for tons and tons of people. So chapter 1 of the next phase, March 12th, not 13th, March 12th in Austin. And the links will be in the show notes for all our listeners. And we'll go ahead and share that on social media as well. So keep it locked here for more information. And Scott and Rachael, you guys are the filmmakers behind Pay or Die, which is premiering at South by Southwest 2023. Congratulations. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Rob. We loved it. It's great to see you.
Yeah.